بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really very excited and happy to be here. We will be talking about threat hunting or hunting threats in your enterprise. This is the title. My name is Abdulrahman Al-Nimari. I work for Romantic International Corporation in Riyadh. I spend my time with the team designing and implementing information security solutions. You can find me almost on a daily basis on Twitter and LinkedIn, my two favorite social networks. Before we start, this is our agenda. We'll be talking first about what is threat hunting and comparing between the traditional incident response process and threat hunting. Next, we will put a threat hunting plan. And then we will talk about the hunt cycle, or how the life cycle of the hunt process. And then we will have hunting in action, some examples of doing threat hunting. And then we will talk about maturity level. How do you improve your threat hunting process and improve your maturity level? Finally, we will measure our success with creating some useful metrics and KPIs. Before we start, I want you to have a look at this report. This is the latest Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report for 2018. It's very disappointing. Attacks, 87% of attacks takes minutes or less to achieve complete compromise of an enterprise. Only 68%, 3% of them are detected as quickly. It's very quickly detected. 68% will take months to know about. We all know that everybody can be hacked, and this is not bad to me. What's bad is to be hacked and not to know about it for such a very long time. Okay, so what's the solution to this? To improve our detection capability. Threat hunting is one way to do it. What's threat hunting? This is the Wikipedia definition of it. Cyber threat hunting is the process of proactively and iteratively searching through networks to detect and isolate advanced threats that evade existing security solutions. This is the Wikipedia definition. Another definition from Squirrel, which is almost the same. Cyber threat hunting is the practice of searching iteratively through data to detect advanced threats that evade traditional security solutions. The two definitions are the same. The key here is that it is a proactive process. So we are starting before something happens. And it is iterative. We loop through this process. We do it always. Okay, here are the steps to put threat hunting plan. Before you start threat hunting, there are some requirements. You should be ready for the threat hunting process. Number one, you should design your network for threat hunting. There are some requirements in your network that should be there before you start anything. We will talk about that. Next, get your team ready. Your team should have the skills, the knowledge to do the threat hunt. Know your enterprise. You cannot protect something that you don't know about. You should know your enterprise. Next, you have to know your adversary, their tools, techniques, and processes. Next, you have to collect hunt data as much as you can. Next, to create hypotheses, which are questions that we will talk about to do the threat hunting. And after you have all these steps ready, you can start the threat hunting process. The first step in the threat hunting plan is to have a properly designed network. You don't want to have such a flat network, which will make it very easy for an adversary to attack and very hard for you as a professional to monitor and detect. Of course, the first step that we should all do is to segment our network. depending on the security levels that we have. For example, we may have DMZ, internal network, campus network. It depends. Every enterprise have its own requirements. You divide your network to segments according to your requirements and your need, and separate these segments or different parts of your network with the appropriate security solutions, like deploying firewalls, routers, switches, proxies. Next one is the NTP. This is a very important step in designing your network. All your devices should be synced to a common source. I have seen networks with different time zones, and this makes it very, very, very difficult to correlate events in case of incidents occur. Next, the protection and detection. You deploy your protection and detection devices and solutions at the appropriate places, because you will be using them to detect and not only to protect and detect, but also to monitor and to have log files. Next, tapping, having network data or the backup data saved somewhere. Try to tap as much as you can. The best places to tap are the borders and the aggregation points of your traffic. For example, core switches, core and distribution switches. Of course, each network has its own design and appropriate. Next, the visibility, to enable logging as much as you can. I always use, for Microsoft network, I use WEF, which is Windows Event Forwarder. And at the SOC, we use WEC, which is Windows Event Collector. All the Active Directory, for example, environment will send their logs to the WEC, which is an aggregation point that collect your log files in a central place, and then you send them to your SIEM solution or whatever place you want. I like to use Sysmon, which is a Microsoft Sys internal tool, which complements Microsoft logging and event capabilities. And then, using I'm a big fan of open source, so I use the Elk stack. I use Security Onion, which has so many different tools in one distribution that can be so useful. For Linux servers, you may use syslog. Of course, aggregating all Sysmon logs, AV, EDR to the SIEM. Okay, the next step. After you design your network properly, to have everything in place, the next step is to know your assets. To know everything. You cannot protect something that you don't have. You don't know. You don't have full visibility of it. So the first step is to have a list of all your digital assets. You may end up with having so many assets in your list, so prioritize them, put the most critical ones at the top of the list, so you will concentrate on protecting, detecting, and monitoring the most critical assets first. Next, you have to know what are the threats that these assets may face. What is the attack surface of this? Enumerating the attack surface of these assets, and then with the intention of knowing what are the different threats. Next, baselining. Know what is normal. This could be your baseline line. It's just a normal traffic. A sudden spike like this may indicate something abnormal, which could be data exfiltration, a hack of some type. Next step is to know your adversary. The best way to know your adversary is to know how they are performing their attacks. This is the well-known cyber kill chain by Lockheed Martin. It's a model that reveals the different stages of a cyber attack, from the early reconnaissance to the goal of data exfiltration at the final step. The first step here is the data gathering step. Fingerprinting your network. Gathering as much information about you as a target as possible. And then the weaponize, or the next step is the weapon step, which is getting the exploit, or the how for example, social engineering, sending social engineering network. This is the second step. These two steps are the planning phase of the attack. Okay? Next one is the deploy, which is how to deploy the attack to the end victim, using waterhole, spear phishing, man-in-the-middle attack, and different steps. Then exploiting them, installing the malware on the target as a next step. Elevation of privileges, achieving command and control, and finally, data exfiltration. These different steps can be divided into these three groups, which is the planning phase, the attack in progress, and these two steps will happen after the attack took place and achieved this. What's the use of these different steps? What's the use of knowing them? You can use them to protect, to detect, and to monitor. And we will see some examples. The next step in knowing your adversary is to know the attack model, which is the adversarial tactics, techniques, and common knowledge. This is a MITRE model. It lists the different columns from initial access, execution, persistent, privilege escalation, defense evasion, credential access, discovery, lateral movement, collection, exfiltration, command, and control. Each operating system has its own attack model, just like this one. For example, there is one for Windows, one for Linux, one for Mac OS X, one for iOS, because different operating systems can be attacked differently. Here, each step, for example, how do you initially access or compromise a system? Here are the different ways of doing it. When you go to the website of MITRE, you will find this list. When you click on them, they will take you to another detailed steps and procedures of how to do something. So this can be used as a starting point for doing our threat hunting. I can't stress enough how important this step is. The data domains that we will be collecting data from to use in our threat hunting are three. We can collect from the application, from the host, or from the network. For example, from the application, you can take Apache web server logs, Microsoft Information Services, for the web server of Microsoft, or others. This is on the application level. At the host level, the antivirus, the EDR, the firewall, the Windows or Sysmon events, the file system, the autoruns, which is a tool by Microsoft internal, which we'll see an example of right now. And the network, we need the flow data from the network. We need a dump of all the packets or the bcap data. We need DNS. We need proxy logs. We need firewall, switches, and routers. All these logs can be collected, aggregated, sanitized, normalized, and then sent to a central repository where they can be effectively searched and hunted for any intrusions. Threat intelligence feeds. Threat intelligence, here we have for the log data, the bcap data, the net flow, and the threat intelligence feed, which will be used as to know who is evil or what is. There's an example of open source threat intelligence feeds that you may use. OTX by Alien Vault, IOC Bucket, Abuse.ch, Blacklist, VirusTotal, and Malware.com, and the list is endless. There are so many of those, and it is increasing rapidly. Okay, the next step. Now we have a plan for threat hunt. We designed our network properly. We know our assets. We have a list of them. We know how adversaries are thinking, what are the tools that they are using, what are their procedures. We have a reference point of the attack chain and the attack MITRE model. We can use all this information to do our threat hunting. Okay, now that I have my data ready, what's the first step? Let us say that you have an enterprise, you want to hunt the threats in this enterprise. You start by asking yourself a question. For example, do I have a lateral movement in my network? Do I have data exfiltration in my network? Are there any command and control channels living on my network? All these questions, you can answer them using threat hunting. For example, data staging and exfiltration. This is the hypothesis. I am assuming that I have exfiltration in my network. What data source can I use to prove or disprove this concept? It's the PCAP's net flow. The network data that you have, the net flow. I love net flow. It's a very easy way and a very fast way to answer questions like this. If you have your net flow data, where to look in the PCAPs and net flow? For example, for data exfiltration, I will look for compressed files leaving my enterprise, encrypted files leaving my enterprise. So many assumptions can be done on this level. Next one, the lateral movement. What data are you going to inspect to prove or disprove this? It's the PCAPs and logs, and we will be checking for PSX, which is a tool, and PowerShell, using PowerShell for data exfiltration. Next question is fileless malware. I will also inspect my PCAPs and NetFlow for PowerShell and WMI, which is a Microsoft built-in tool. Command and control, you can check your DNS server, DNS records, HTTP, brologs for malicious URLs, domains, user agents, or DNS. Once you have your questions ready, you put them. Okay, someone may ask, there are endless questions. I may ask data exfiltration, staging, lateral movement, malware, command and control channel, and the list is endless. How do I know what questions to ask for my own enterprise? Can someone help? How do you know the right question to ask for your own unique enterprise? It's the threat model. What threats, what risk your enterprise is facing? Do you have some confidential material that someone may exfiltrate out of your organization? Watch for your DLP solutions, your log files for this. Concentrate on this threat. So each enterprise is different. Once we have the question ready, created the hypothesis, we will start investigating using our data, tools, and techniques by searching them and having the results. And then after the step, we will uncover new patterns and TTPs as an output of the previous step. Next, we will inform and enrich our analytics. And then we will loop again, either on the same question or another question. Okay, how much? There is a mistake that some enterprises do. They will stay in this loop forever. For 6, 7, 8, 9 months, they are threat hunting for the same threat. And they are continuously doing it. Can we do it endlessly? No. We will do it, and if we notice that this step is continuously being done, it should be automated and it should be moved from threat hunting to operations. So to make threat hunt focus on new threats, new hunts, new tools and techniques used by adversary. Okay, now let us say we are threat hunting. We want to know how good are we in the threat hunt, or at what maturity level are we? We'll start from maturity level 0 to maturity level 4. 0, which is mainly reactive. You are waiting for some tool to alert you. You are waiting for an IDS or a firewall to send you an alert that something is wrong, and you will start react to this alert and do something. So it depends on two things to define your maturity level: how much data you have and how you are dealing with this. Here you are reactive and you have little or no data. What do we mean by data? We mean the log files, the bcap data, the net flow data, everything. If you are on maturity level 1, you are incorporating threat intel in your threat hunt, and you have moderate or high level of data acquisition. You have some data, and you are using this data with threat intel feeds to know what is normal and abnormal in your enterprise. Threat level 2 is the procedural one, which follows analysis and procedures created by others. For example, if we use, in the previous slides, we talked about the cyber kill chain and the attack model. If we use these two to do our threat hunting, we are at threat hunt level 2. We are following some procedures, and we have high or very high level of routine data collection. Number 3 is the innovative one. We have our own procedures. We are enriching our processes, adding something new to them. For example, the MITRE attack model may not have any step for your own unique organization. You will be adding procedures for this. And number 4 is the leading, which is the upper level of maturity model, which employs complete automation of the threat hunting process. We all know the pyramid of pain. Start from hash values, IP addresses, domain names. If you are using these 3 in your threat hunt, you're at maturity level 0. If you are using host artifacts and network artifacts, which are annoying, you are at maturity level 1. More than that, you are in maturity level 2 up to 4. Okay, this is an example, a very simple one on threat hunting. Let us have that we have a malicious IP address. We know that this IP is malicious, one IP or group of IPs. We know they are malicious from some sort of threat intel. We will take these malicious IP addresses and search for them in our network flow. We are not touching the bcap yet. We are searching for in our network flow for these malicious IP addresses. We found that these malicious IP addresses are talking to some internal IP addresses in our enterprise. We take these internal IP addresses and further again do network flow search for our own internal IP addresses talking to these malicious IP addresses. And then we found some anomaly traffic there. Okay? We will take the timestamp. NetFlow has the timestamp. We can take the timestamp and further investigate in our bcap files and log files. So you see, how do we start our process? Starting from NetFlow, knowing that this is malicious, taking the timestamp and searching further in our log files and bcap data. This is example number 2. Anyone knows this tool? Used it before? Microsoft sysinternals auto run, they call it. Anyone used it before? No one? This is a very excellent tool. You have to use it. It has 2 executable files. One is the GUI. The second one is a command line, which I always use. What does this tool do? You run it on your Windows host. It will enumerate all the different ways that any program will achieve persistent on your computer to survive boot. When you boot your computer, there are some programs and services that will auto-start with the boot process of your host. This tool will enumerate them all. And there are so many different ways a program or a service can survive boots. So many different ways. Not only the schedule, not only the registry, there's something related to Internet Explorer, there's something related to the login process, there is something related to when login process is being done. If user X has logged in, start this process or this program, etc. This is a complete complicated process. This tool will enumerate them all. The command line version will enumerate everything, put it in a CSV file, and you inspect it using your tools. Okay. My second example. Deploy auto-run C to endpoints. The command line version of the auto-runs that will enumerate your auto-startup programs on each host. I use either WMI. Anyone use WMI from Microsoft? Anyone? This is also a tool that you can run commands remotely. For example, I want to deploy this tool to all my endpoints in the enterprise. Create a script file, use WMI or PowerShell, deploy this tool to each workstation, run it remotely, collect the result of it, sanitize it, normalize it, and search it. Okay? So we deployed it, we collect the result in the SIM, and then we compare the baseline to our baseline to what we have from the tool. One thing this tool can give you is the hash value of all the executables that are scheduled to auto-run. It will give you the hash. There are some legitimate programs that will auto-run on your tool, right? For example, your AV will always run with your boot. It's antivirus. What about if I change the executable of the AV to some other one? What if I backdoored a legitimate file on your system and then copy it back again in some way? So you have a legitimate file which is backdoored. The auto-runs tool will create the hash value and return it in the result. Take the result value, even if the program is benign. Take the hash value, consult your threat intel field, send it to VirusTotal, know if this is a good or bad one. Then when we have anomalies, which is something bad, we will start investigating, then automating the process and creating it again. Okay. I have 2 minutes. Your executive management may not know and sometimes may not appreciate all the techie stuff that you are doing. For me, for example, as a security manager, I may not be a technical guy. I am on the management side. So you will talk to me about SIMs, PowerShell, WMI, this tech stuff. I don't appreciate it. I don't know it. I need something that you did. So you have to create metrics for the management, for the executive. These are some of the most important metrics that can be created for threat hunting process. First one is the number of incidents by severity. How many incidents in this time period did I hunt and how severe each one of them? Number of compromised hosts. How many hosts there was compromised? If you go to your CEO and tell him that we have in our enterprise 20,000 endpoints, we discovered some backdoor on 10,000 of them, we successfully remove it, rebuild the machine, and we are okay. He will be happy. But don't tell him that I deployed AV on each one, and there was some techie stuff here and techie stuff there, and we are doing this to do it and that to do it. He won't appreciate it. He won't understand it. Next, dwell time of incidents discovered. This is, for me, is the most important metric. It relates to the Verizon report that we have seen, the first slide on our presentation. We said that organizations are being hacked and they don't detect it for months. So this metric will measure how fast did you detect the intrusions on your network. This metric for me consists of 3 parameters or 3 sub-metrics. For example, the first one is infection to detection. From the infection point to detection, how long did you take to detect it? Was it immediate? 1 day, 2 days, months, years? Number 2 is the detection to investigation. How long does it take you to start investigating? And finally, from investigation to recovery, how long does it take you to recover? Logging gaps identified and corrected during the process. You will find some logging gaps in your enterprise and you are rectifying as you go. Vulnerabilities identified. Some hunts may reveal some vulnerabilities in your enterprise. Insecure practices. Hunts transition to analytics and new visibilities gained. These are some of the resources. You will find them along with the presentation at the conference website. Thank you very much.